Welcome everybody to another episode of Fantasy News. I'm your disheveled goblin host, and today we're going to go ahead and jump into what I think will be one final update, at least I hope to God, around the Wheel of Time adaptation's cancellation. And that's because we have gotten word from Sanderson's thoughts on what happened. I have been waiting for that, and it reads as follows. I just had it pulled up. Where the hell did it go? I wasn't really involved. Don't know anything more than what is public. They told me they were renegotiating and I thought it would work out. Then I heard nothing for 2 months. Then learned this from the news like everyone else. I do think it's a shame, as well I had my problems with the show. It had a fan base who deserved better than a cancellation after the best season. I won't miss being largely ignored. They wanted my name on it for legitimacy, but not to involve me in any meaningful way. And that's something I really wish I had brought up in my Wheel of Time autopsy video, that yes, Sanderson earlier on, I think around season 2, complained about them not taking notes for his show, which is absolutely insane to me to do. He wrote the books. I can understand if there are specific things where it's like, hey, for television, we can't do that, so we have to ignore like one comment there, but to have something where it's like, largely Sanderson is ignored for his feedback on the show is not only like, I think, generally bad advice when it comes to the author of a material, but a bit insulting. And I'm just kind of like airing all of it out here from all sides. So to give a little anecdote, when I was invited out to Sanderson's house to watch the season 2 finale, it was kind of just like a blanket invitation. It was like, hey, don't watch that finale. We're gonna get you and Matt Hatch from the Dusty Wheel and watch it. It'll be a good time. And that's all I really knew. And I was like, cool. And because of that, I thought Sanderson was excited for the finale and thought it was going to be really good. And then as we were watching it, it quickly became apparent that he, going into it, knew it was going to be a weaker episode. I think he said he had seen a script. And sitting there watching it with him, it was like, oh, wow. I think Matt and I were brought here to send a message. I was like, yeah, Sanderson found the 2 biggest names in the Wheel of Time space, brought them into the room to sit down with him and be like, yep, this episode bad. And I would say the ending of season 2 is probably like in my bottom 3 episodes of the Wheel of Time.
Nope, don't understand that one. What a weird way to get there.
I feel like the characters are confused on how that happened.
I do actually like this.
I do not.
I'm saying I like the channeling.
Oh yeah, the channeling's great.
Just more of Moiraine and Lan not being able to do anything.
And I remember some people in the like live chat that was happening for that went as far as to say like, what does Sanderson know? Like he can't, y'all. It's Sanderson. If he's got a problem with how Wheel of Time is being adapted, listen to him. There's a reason why like a third of my Wheel of Time autopsy video is talking about how legitimately lucky we are as Wheel of Time fans to have gotten him. I haven't asked him. I do want to ask him, like, did you bring Matt and I out there to send a message? Because when I saw season 3 was like actually getting closer to the source material, part of me thought like, did that work? Did him bringing like the 2 biggest voices in for Wheel of Time on social media and him sitting down to be like, they made bad choices here, did that get them to finally be like, all right, let's get closer to the source material? I don't know. I would really like an answer to that if that was the plan. And it did get the result that he wanted, and that's why season 3 was better. Well played. Very well done. And the only reason I would believe that is because he is a fantasy author who writes like political scheming for a living. All right, it's time to get spice melange. Spice. Time to get spicy. And that's because we're teaming up with Balessa. And we here at the Goblin Horde are sex positive and encourage all of you to embrace your smoosh side. Smoosh. Now the one you saw summoning the Cider is the Ultra Bow, Balessa's most advanced stroker. With its powerful thrusting and rotating action, this high-tech toy delivers intense, lifelike stimulation that goes way beyond the usual. Ditch the popcorn bucket and choose from 8 dynamic modes, 4 speeds, and 4 patterns to customize your experience exactly how you like it. And you see this? The internal material is ultra stretchy and accommodating for any size. And that is a challenge. They also sent us the Key Vibe. That landed cool, which is a small, comfortable, magnetic underwear attachment made of velvety smooth silicone with a 6-meter range. So that if you're tracking them in the woods, you can suddenly make a noise. Oh, that vibrates so much. Does it affect how my voice comes out? Oh, neat. The exciting news for you all is that Bellesa is literally sending out free vibrators or gift cards for vibrators to everyone who signs up to my giveaway. It's got the power. All you have to do is click the link down below. Now back to the video. But this is going to take us to the fact that the casting has been announced for the Harry Potter adaptation of the main trio for the series being developed over at HBO. After going through over 32,000 applicants, Harry, Ron, and Hermione will be played by Dominic McLaughlin, Alistair Stout, and Arabella Staton. My only real thoughts on this casting are they absolutely seem age appropriate, which is great, but this seems to be another Goliath project for a studio, as it's being reported that Warner Brothers is investing about $100 million per episode, and they're actually seeming to pull back on the number of episodes per season, with rumors saying it will actually be around 6 instead of the typical 8. And while I'm normally against that, like reducing episode counts for adaptations, with how short, especially even the first Harry Potter book is, going beyond 6-8 episodes seems like you'd have to actually be stretching the material rather than condensing it. In good news, Warner Brothers does seem to be leaning into practical sets. I just don't love seeing the numbers of like $1 billion being thrown at something that is in its first season, mainly just due to seeing what's happened recently with adaptations that have had gargantuan investments up front, because then studios, when they don't seem to have like an immediate return, freak out and walk away. I'm not just referencing what happened with WoT. That's like Netflix's business strategy, it seems, at this point. And obviously a big budget isn't necessarily a bad thing. Look at Andor. I would just not want to see as a part of the marketing like how much money they put in, and I would be most excited if I saw an adaptation being announced where they're like, we have every season written. Like, we have it all planned out and it's good to go. With how that worked out for Andor, which I'll be getting hopefully a review for you of later this week, that would get me the most amped. Oh yeah, you gave like writers years of runway to be able to get the story done? Yeah, great, because an adaptation can only be as good as its writing, full stop. And the more that I think about this, the more just insane it is to me that that's not standard practice. I get that money wants a fast return, sure, but if I was a studio investing near $1 billion in a project, I would want the safety of we've written all of it before we move. Like, yes, you want to make shareholders happy and you want to move quick, but it seems just so much smarter and have such a better proven track record to even just give your writers another year of development to just get it done, plan it out. That's worked so much better consistently throughout the history of goddamn television. Why? And then we also got a first look at the Dungeon Crawler Carl lit RPG Webtoon adaptation that we had leaked a while back, and the first look has guaranteed us 2 things. One, once again, they have gotten Princess Donut's fur wrong, and I kind of like that at this point. It's becoming the Dresden wearing the hat on the book covers, but never wearing a hat in the books of Dungeon Crawler Carl. They should never draw Princess Donut's fur right. I had a big issue with how young Carl looked in this, but again, I'm not familiar with Webtoon, so I really dug into the comments of what people were saying. That's apparently a very common market choice for representing characters and stuff. In fact, there was actually someone involved in the company who did a pretty transparent comment here. I don't know the full backstory behind what's being said, so take it with a grain of salt, but I thought this was an interesting look behind the scenes. Someone commented, "I won't hold my breath. The Primal Hunter webtoon is terrible," to which another commenter responded, yes, it is. If we are lucky, this won't be that bad, but my hope is low," to which someone who works at the studio responded, "So I can speak to this a bit. I'm in charge of Atheon Comics and am producing for DCC as well as the other projects we have. Primal Hunter was produced by Webtoons internally. We had absolutely no control over it, but this isn't the case for DCC or pretty much all the other Webtoons being made right now. I know the art style is definitely Webtoon targeted. We wanted to give it the best shot on the platform. That said, we aren't trying to change Matt's work. Our goal is to bring it to a new audience. I can promise that we are keeping to what was written as closely as possible and working with Matt to make sure we don't butcher anything. And I want to be clear, I knew what almost none of that was. Well, I am the fantasy guy. Webtoons I've had very little to do with, aside from like literally what you've seen here on the channel. But the biggest surprise for me there that I was actually able to understand is that there's like a specific style for Webtoons that tends to do better, and I can certainly understand why making Carl look younger might appeal to a younger audience if that's what Webtoons are shooting for, though
that's not my preference, okay?
Having Princess Donut's fur not match, that one I don't quite understand as much from this justification, though that being said, it has never really matched when Princess Donut's been depicted, so that's fine. I want to make it abundantly clear that I did not come up with that Dresden cover comparison for Princess Donut's fur. In my original recording, I even said this. I can't take credit for that. Someone else put that in the comments. I'll credit them here. And so I have been trying so hard to actually find where I read that comparison from, because it's a great comparison, but now it seems to have disappeared. I went ahead and started by checking the Reddit threads, went to the Lit RPG discussion, wasn't there. I went to the DCC subreddit, where again, there's a discussion happening, but it wasn't in the comments there. I jumped on over to r/fantasy, but it wasn't even posted there, which brought me to go, okay, maybe it was in my Discord. No, it's not. Scrolled through, no one talking about it there. All right, so possibly I saw something on Twitter. No, went there and it was just and so I jumped on over to Blue Sky and nada, nothing at all. This led me to think maybe it was a false memory, because I have been having some weird dreams about some fantasy series I've been reading. That could be it. Which, Pop Prophecy? I remembered that there was also a Dresden Files adaptation announced, so possibly there was some kind of like subconscious part of my mind that was prophesying this news back when the Dresden adaptation. Nope, I really want to credit this person. God damn it. But that is not where the DCC news ends this week, because we have had a badass update to the franchise coming from the author himself, and anyone who makes merchandise in the fantasy genre and is a fan of the franchise should probably pay attention to this, because Matt Dinneman took to Reddit to say, "Hi folks, this is just a quick heads up. If you are an individual as opposed to a large mass-producing corporation and you create and sell DCC-themed merchandise in your Etsy store and or offline at events, etc., I'd like you to know we are in the process of creating a free, as in you don't have to pay me or anybody else anything, licensing agreement that will be available to individuals only selling their own original art and designs in the DCC universe. The process will be simple and straightforward, and there won't be any hidden gotchas in there other than you aren't allowed to use AR art to get a license. We just have to have you registered, and we have to approve the individual items you are selling. Feel free to list your Etsy store here for now in this post. I'll soon have a more formal call to action with specific details as soon as we're done drafting the formalities of the agreement. I'm also going to need your help finding the listings of the bootleg t-shirt vendors stealing other people's stuff. The reason why we're doing this is to protect you, my friends and fans. As someone who has lived in the artist alley for most of my adult life, it's important to me that individual fans are able to make and sell merch using their own original art. But we also want to stop the people who don't give a shit about DCC from stealing and selling my art and your art. We will also have more formal licensing agreements with large vendors coming soon. We are about to start trademarking multiple DCC-themed items, and the official store is also about to have a bunch of new stuff. It's going to get much more complicated in the near future, so it's important we know who you are now. Once all the trademarks are in place and large corporations such as NBC Universal start sending out their hunter-killer bots to ruthlessly shoot down bootlegs, I want to make sure you're protected and greenlit. Which, Matt Dinneman, oh my god, dude, keep being this incredible author and representation of how authors can support fans within the fantasy genre. I adore seeing this, because so often there's this kind of like awkward arrangement between authors and people who make fan merch, where the author kind of has to ignore the fact that there are a bunch of people just kind of making merchandise for their franchise without permission, let's say, but they don't want to be a dick, so they let it slide, or they do take action, which they do have every right to do. This allows the best of both worlds, where these people can then, under the protection of the author, continue to have their businesses run even as the franchise gets to a point where big business gets involved. Matt Dinniman here is jumping ahead of the big train of success coming down the rails to protect the people who have helped make DCC bigger and badder by spreading it. So if you are someone who makes fantasy merch, be sure to check this on out. Of course, linked as everything I talk about here down below. But now, let us go ahead and jump into the cover reveals. And this is going to start out with a big name in the fantasy space. Ryan Cahill has posted the cover for Of Gods and Ashes, saying, "This isn't the reveal I planned on doing this week, but some things take longer than expected, and I am a big proponent of it marketing. I begin work on Of Gods and Ashes later this year, the last book in the Bound and the Broken. The sun will rise and it will set." And I just wanted to actually add a congratulations here, because he released the first book in 2021, and now in 2025 he'll be releasing the 5th and final book, finishing an epic high fantasy series in a fast, efficient manner. Holy crap, that's actually rare to see these days. It's got big dragons, it's high fantasy, definitely something who are interested in that genre should check out if they want to see the indie high fantasy scene. And if you start now, it looks like it'll probably be having its last book release right around the time you catch up, as long as Ryan Cahill does not suddenly get a bunch of writer's block. But then we also had a cover reveal from Galex for The Poet Empress, written by Shen Tao, which is going to be released January of 2026 and is described as, in the waning years of the Azalea dynasty, the emperor is dying, the land consumed by famine, and poetry magic lost all to accept the powerful. Wei Yin is desperate after the 5th death of a sibling, with her family and village on the brink of starvation. She will do anything to save those she loves, even offer herself as a concubine to the cruel heir of the beautiful and brutal Azalea house. But in a twist of fate, the palace stands on the knife edge of civil war, with Wei trapped in its center at the side of a violent prince. To survive, Wei must harden her heart, rely on her wit, and become dangerous herself, even if it means becoming a poet in a world where women are forbidden to read, and composing the most powerful spell of all, a ballad of death, ... and love. But then we also got a cover reveal from Tor, and that would be for Cabaret In Flames by Hachi Puello. Pitched as Interview with a Vampire meets Certain Dark Things in an alternate Brazil, where brutal flesh-hungering ghouls stalk the night streets and manipulate the government from their glittering cabaret. And this easily wins my favorite cover of the week. I love the success of this night aesthetic with these glowing, I think that's not tattoos. This person's hollow. It's fascinating. And in the vein of Dresden Files and so many other urban fantasies, I have a huge soft spot in my literary heart for an underground, seedy, supernatural world that manipulates and is known by only a select few within the mortal realm. I mean, it's a trope that, I don't know, maybe I'm alone in this, but will never get old. I'm always down for it, because I hope it's true. It's not, but there's a part of me. And then finally, legend in the space, Brian McClellan, has actually released a cover as well this week, and that would be for Swords, Cider, and Other Distractions, an installment in the Glass Immortals series. For those of you unaware, Brian McClellan is one of the biggest names in flintlock fantasy, and he tends to have rapiers instead of broadswords, if you get what I'm saying. And judging by the cover of this, that is continuing. I'm glad there's no longer feathers and caps. I know it's popular in fantasy spaces to want to wear cloaks and stuff along those lines. No. I'm very happy with how comfortable clothes are now. I'm good without a big, broad hat with a feather. That would fall out. That'd be super annoying. And for those of you who are potential writers in the audience who would like to submit some of their work to possibly be put in an anthology, a great way to get your name out there, there is a queer love anthology being worked on over at Big Thinking Publishing that has submissions open now, with the theme just being queer love of any kind, being romance, friendship, and even found family. They're looking for 1,500 to 5,000 word short stories or nonfiction articles or essays between 500 to 2,500 words, with an overlay of an autumn aesthetic. And 100% of the profits of this anthology will be going to charity. So if you'd like to see more details about how to submit your work, links down in the thing below the like button. Wink. And just a real quick plug, if you'd like to get the TBR shirt, it'll be gone midnight tonight, so it's your last opportunity. But this is going to take us to the fact that, oh my God, we have gotten a trailer for Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. And holy crap, it doesn't look necessarily 100% book accurate, but it certainly seems gargantuanly more so than many other adaptations of Mary Shelley's masterpiece have previously been. Then again, of course, say it with me, trailers are lies. This could be far more book accurate. I'm not sure. It does seem that we're actually going to possibly be getting like the full character arc for the monster, and it'll have far more agency than just like the shambling thing that many people actually think Frankenstein's monster is supposed to be that is not in the book. And if you mix Guillermo del Toro and Oscar Isaac, I essentially have to be there. And this director adaptation combo is just like a match made in heaven in my mind. Now, the only thing I've seen people kind of be getting wrong about this is because it's a Netflix movie, people seem to be thinking it's not going to be getting a theatrical release. That is not true. It absolutely is. And I actually think Netflix has a little bit of a problem here because I've seen many people assume movies of theirs are not going to be in theaters that have been. Glass Onion, for example, a lot of people I knew said they wish they'd had the opportunity to see that in theaters when they could. And same thing here. This will have a theatrical run, and I absolutely am going to be looking to see a Guillermo del Toro movie in theaters. But there's just so much that's absolutely nailing it here. The color palette, the gothic architecture and approach, holy smokes. And from what we've seen so far, it's going to have its theatrical release and Netflix release in November of this year. I feel like this has been in the works for ages. God, I'm excited to finally be getting it. Wow, and right when I actually finished recording a bit of a rant at the end of this fantasy news, Lord Grimdark posted something incredibly exciting on Twitter. It seems that Joe Abercrombie has sold the adaptation rights to The Devils. To which director, you might ask? Amazingly, James Cameron. Lightstorm now has the rights to Joe Abercrombie's latest release, and it is being said that Joe Abercrombie will co-write the script with Cameron. And from what James Cameron posted on Facebook about Joe Abercrombie's work, he seems to be a big ass fan. Hot damn. I am not gonna claim that I saw this pairing coming. James Cameron's not my first pick for a Joe Abercrombie adaptation, but he's such a legendary filmmaker who has had quite the diverse career that I have pretty great confidence that he'd be able to bring Joe Abercrombie's work to light in a fantastic way. So, holy shit, good job, Joe. Though this is incredibly early on, things can go wrong, and this actually brings me to another Joe Abercrombie adaptation update, where in a recent interview, he said the likelihood of his Best Served Cold adaptation getting done is still very much so uncertain.
So do you have any new updates on the Best Served Cold movie, or do I just have to be realistic about these things?
Well, you've always got to be realistic, don't you? Yeah, well, I've been around that block a few times, or, you know, the block of film and TV stuff. So I'm pretty sanguine these days. I don't tend to get too carried away with things because they often just, you know, get to a certain point, not go further, fall apart in one way or another. So the Best of Cold thing got quite a long way, actually. Got very close to being made in many ways, but has kind of petered out, isn't necessarily dead. I mean, that's the other thing. These things never quite die. They kind of, you know, morph into a slightly different form, get picked up elsewhere. And because the industry is so constantly shifting and changing, and the people at the various different streamers are always changing, and they get new mandates and new ideas of what they're after. And so something will, you know, be dropped in one place and maybe picked up in another at a later time. So definitely not dead, and there's other irons in the fire. But yeah, I mean, don't hold your breath.
I thought with the casting of Rebecca Ferguson already being announced, attached, and Joe Abercrombie seeming really excited early on, that it was very likely, but it seems to be in possibly some rocky waters as well. So keep that in mind, but Joe Abercrombie getting multiple projects pushing through Hollywood right now still keeps my hopes really high that Lord Grimdark will see his work brought to the live action someday. Hopefully, someday soon. But before we get to a very non-fantasy related rant that I would like to spill from my guts this week, we also had an announced rumor coming out for the upcoming Zelda adaptation that is for sure in the works, but I want to put it at the end here because it is a rumor, and I want to repeat the word rumor one last time because that would it be. But many fans are excited to see that it is being heavily rumored that Hunter Schafer, you may know for her role in Euphoria, is being said to be looked at as potential casting for the titular princess. And yes, holding up these two side by side, nail hit with hammer, dead on. It's funny, I saw one person actually posting Hunter Schafer's height, being like, this person's too tall because they're shorter. Y'all, we've figured out how to shoot tall people shorter since Lord of the Rings. All right, that's not gonna be a problem. Tom Cruise has made a career out of being taller on film than he is in real life. He's a little man. A little crazy man. But then in the final story of the week, I want to talk about a show that is not within the SFF space, but is speculative fiction, and I happen to have a lot of feelings about it because we've also seen a trailer drop for Dexter Resurrection, and this time he's in New York. How can Dexter be headed to New York now with how the last revival ended without getting into spoilers? Who knows? All right. The Dexter show for me growing up, at least the first few seasons of it up to the Trinity Killer, was one of my favorite shows of all time. I actually even enjoyed the season with Hannah McKay because I'm in love with that actress and I kind of bought their chemistry. Regardless of that though, the Dexter franchise since the original series last 3 seasons, I believe, has just descended more and more into ridiculous schlock. Though with it having a strong following, of course, they're not going to let it go. It's a money milker, and the original creator who was kicked off wanted to come back in, and that's why some fans were actually really excited for the original revival because it dipped in quality after the original showrunner left. But the revival, let's just say, did not go over well. And they seem to be kind of just leaning into that because there's like a tradition in horror that you can't kill the monster. They're always going to be back. And to me, it's beginning to feel like Dexter's become Jason Voorhees. He might as well put on a hockey mask at this point because he's even doing the Taking Manhattan thing. God damn it. And they got all these A-list celebrities in here like Uma Thurman and Peter Dinklage, Neil Patrick Harris. Why? Because paychecks and they don't have to try that hard for this project. It's weird. And it went from being a show whose writing in like the early seasons I genuinely thought was interesting and respected. I have not rewatched it as like a mature adult, so possibly it's not as good as I remember, to being bad to the point where I was just bored by it and not wanting to watch it. But now it's gotten so schlocky that it's like done the full horseshoe and it's back up in me being interested in it again because like the same reason why I do watch Jason X. It's interestingly bad. And I have a feeling Dexter Resurrection is going to have completed the horseshoe and come back to actually me wanting to watch it due to its terribleness. That's all I had to say on that.
That's all I had to say about that.
But this has just been your latest episode of Fantasy News. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon to flex support what I do here. And have a good one, y'all. Peace. And of course, I'd like to record a special shout out to my latest high tier patrons, Jarrett Lee and Chris Davis.